Right then, so obviously this weekend is the big fight between David Benavidez and David Morrell. I have done my preview on this, and a video on is Morrell in Benavidez's head going into this fight, but is Morrell actually on David Benavidez's level coming into this fight against him this Saturday? And it's an interesting question in my opinion because I feel like both Benavidez and David Morrell, as of now, are kind of in different stages of their careers. Benavidez much more experienced in the pros. David Morrell only 11-0 in the pros, but we all know how good of an amateur he was. 130 wins for him in the amateurs with only 2 losses. Is he on David Benavidez's level? We're going to look at the opponents that both guys have been up against, and even more that I'm going to be getting into. But yeah, I do believe David Benavidez will beat David Morrell. But does David Morrell have a good chance of being able to win this, or is this a bit soon in the professional career for David Morrell? Is it? I mean, I expect it to be tough for Benavidez, but is he good enough to win the fight? Is, in my opinion, the big question. So, look, let's have a look at David Morrell's box rack, first of all. And let's have a look at the opponent who he has been up against. I mean, we first look at it and he's got some good names on there, because of the amateur experience he's got, he was chucked right into 12 rounders from the off against, in his third fight, a tough opponent in Lennox Allen. Like, that's not an easy fight to take in your first fight. And Morrell looked good there, and Allen was able to give him a good 12 rounds to, get his experience in. So it's a tough fight to take straight away in the career of David Morrell. But yeah, as an experienced amateur, that is, what you do expect. But that's not an easy first fight to take, in my opinion. And Morrell was able to look good in that fight. And, again, he's still, going in 10 rounder there, 12 rounders. He is experienced. And, it's not like he hasn't gone 12 rounds before. When 12 rounds he basically begot the KO. But, he's experienced. I mean, Morrell has boxed. He has boxed 12 rounds before. And, that is a big positive going into a Benavidez fight. And again, in his most recent one as well, at light heavyweight, he has gone 12 rounds. And that's important when you're going up against someone like David Benavidez, because he is someone who is very, very, very good at keeping up a good pace. And that's important here for David Morrell. But before this, though, he was knocking out guys in like 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds at the end of the day. But, they're not easy opponents that, he was, of course, expected to go in and win. But but Morrell's done it in good fashion. But yeah, I really do think it's interesting. I really do think it's interesting. But he's gone the full 12 rounds twice. He got a KO here. But it's like, we'll basically say 3 times. But this is the thing. When you're up against someone like David Benavidez, it's really tough to keep up a good pace against him. A lot of times, though, Morrell's been blasting guys out of there. But as I said, it is important that he has gone 12 rounds before, and he has been up against competition which can test him. And that's an important thing as well, in my opinion, 100%. But, look, we look at David Benavidez's resume, and he has been the 12 rounds a few times before. And we look at his resume, going the distance against Alexander Govstik. He got some good experience rounds in that fight, of course, against a tough opponent in Alexander Govstik. He's been 12 rounds with the likes of Caleb Plant as well, which is a really tough one. You already look at this resume of Benavidez, and you've got some good elite names on there straight away. Govstik, Andrade, Caleb Plant. He's got these names on his record. David Lamux isn't a bad one to have on the resume either. But we also do look at this as well, though. And it's not like Ronald Ellis is anything amazingly special, though, if we're being completely honest. Like, there are a few padded wins on the record here of David Benavidez. I think, Anthony Durrell is a good win for him to have, 100%. That's a good win. But again, there were a few wins where it's like, this win isn't anything all too special. And David Morrell will be able to probably beat quite a few of these guys that he has got on the resume. But he hasn't fully proved it yet in the pros, though. Like, J. Leon Love, that's not exactly a great win on the record, is it? And, he went 12 rounds twice with Ronald Garrell. But still, though, it's like he's a tough, durable opponent. But he's never been anything amazingly special, has he? But again, that was earlier on in David Benavidez's career. That is what you do have to think about. Would Morrell be a level above him? Yes, you would expect him to be. It's interesting. I mean, is Morrell above Andrade? Yes, probably. Is he better than Gofstick? I mean, that is interesting because Gofstick, no, he's not in his prime right now, but at the end of the day, he's a real experienced guy who can cause anyone in the division problems. It's interesting. Like, he's more experienced than what Morrell is. That is something that's interesting in my opinion. You've got Caleb Plant. Is Morrell better than him? Probably not right now. That's the thing. But I don't know. Again, styles make fights, though. Styles make fights. And, it's interesting because Morrell could have a style that could cause Benavidez problems. Both guys like to come forward and do damage at the end of the day. Both guys like to come forward and do damage. They're not going to take a step back. So that is something that could trouble David Benavidez. Morrell has got power. He's got 9 knockouts out of his 11 wins. He's got power. And that's an important thing that you have to have in order to beat David Benavidez. Does David Morrell punch harder than what Alexander Gofstick does? Yes, he does. Does he punch harder than what Demetrius Andrade does? I reckon he probably does. Does he punch harder than Caleb Plant? Probably. I think David Morrell is he's a very good puncher, and his counters are very good as well. He's a very, very, very good, smart counter puncher. And he can definitely catch Benavidez off guard at points in this fight. Without a shadow of a doubt, he can. So that is something. Could David Morrell outsmart David Benavidez in this fight? Yes. He is a smarter boxer than what Demetrius Andrade is. But even though, Andrade wasn't able to cause Benavidez any problems. Is David Morrell smarter than an older Alexander Gofstick? Yes. Is he smarter than what a Caleb Plant is? Again, that's interesting. Different kind of fighter. But yes, Morrell hits harder than what Caleb Plant does. I think, and I do think he arguably probably is smarter as well. Overall, from what we've seen with how he's been able to box in the amateurs and all. I mean, pro-wise. I mean, it's interesting, though, because this is the first big test of David Morrell's career, though. David Benavidez has already been in big tests, and he has passed them with flying colours, if we're being real. Got a big win over Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, Alexander Gofstick. He's got big wins in his resume. We've seen it. Anthony Durrell, that's a good win for him to have as well. So, we've seen David Benavidez be able to outsmart guys in his fights and, be able to overwhelm them with his volume and power. But has he came up against a good, smart counterpuncher like David Morrell, who hits as hard as him? I don't think so. I mean, Caleb Plant's a smart fighter, but David Morrell, with the amateur experience he has gotten, with what he has achieved, it could be very, very, very tough. But overall, the edge is with Benavidez because of the experience overall and speed that he does have. Morrell has good volume, but it's not the same as David Benavidez is. Morrell has got attributes which are better than what Benavidez's are. I think Benavidez is an underrated counterpuncher, but he's not as good as a counterpuncher as someone like David Morrell. And I don't think he's came up against as good as a counterpuncher as David Morrell. Morrell likes to work the body nicely as well at times. Has Benavidez fought a body puncher like David Morrell? No. He hasn't, in my opinion. He has not. So it's interesting. I think Morrell has got attributes to cause Benavidez problems. Has he got the attributes to beat him, though? No. I think as the fight goes on, it's Benavidez's fight to lose. And I can't see Benavidez getting knocked out early on. That's the thing. It's interesting. There are lots of questions that are going to be answered on Saturday night. Anyway, I'm going to speak to you on the next one. Thanks for watching.